How hard do you try? Does it work to actively pursue someone? And there's supposed to be evidence that, if they're needy, then yeah, you can make them fall in love with you. I mean, what a horrible thing to say. Thanks so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. I want to welcome back transformational relationship mentor, Dr. Gary Salyer. Gary, thanks for being here again.
Thank you, Silky. Always a pleasure.
Gary is the author of Safe to Love Again, How to Release the Pain of Past Relationships and Create the Love You Deserve. Absolutely appropriate for the discussion today. So let me set this up for you. A few weeks ago, I did a video with Treva, who you know well, you've been on their show, and it was about waiting for people to fall in love with you. And she referenced in her blog that when she Googled how to make people fall in love with you, like these billions of things came up, and they all focused on basically manipulating others or not being yourself. It was really, really interesting. And I did that as well and came up with this absolutely horrible article. And I thought, I got to talk about this with Gary. Because if people are reading this and they think that this works or that this is something that is good for a lasting relationship, they're definitely barking up the wrong tree. Anything you want to say before we get started here?
All I know is when you sent me the link and I saw the title, I went and got my Pepto-Bismol first.
Well, I don't want to really focus on this so much other than to really draw out what you might be, getting out there. And like the title was, 6 ways or whatever, scientifically proven ways. And they actually here basically say to manipulate, like, how do you manipulate it? And that's what lots of the advice comes down to is manipulating the situation. Let's talk about that.
Well, and particularly, when he said scientifically, I'm thinking a lot of scientists would disagree with his rendition of the field. Okay. And as soon as I finished reading that article, I had the smell of a certain branch of NLP, neuro-linguistic program, especially the testosterone filtrated type. Mm-hmm. And I said, and I looked him up, and I said, yep, I could smell it. There's a branch of people who only look at science, and you see it a lot in social media. How can we use that oxytocin you get from the like button to get people to keep coming back? I mean, that was Facebook's real great. Whoa, let's go get some oxytocin involved here with likes. How can we hijack human belonging? Yes, we can. I mean, we're learning from social media. You can hijack brains, but getting someone to fall in love with you while you are manipulating them, and that you can get anybody to fall in love with you.
Just to give our viewers an idea of like what we're talking about here in terms of this bad advice. One is, meeting the criteria of the person that you're trying to get, meaning just do whatever it is that they want or fulfill their unmet needs. What about my needs? How hard do you try? Does it work to actively pursue someone? And there's supposed to be evidence that, if they're needy, then yeah, you can make them fall in love with you. I mean, what a horrible thing to say. Use your mutual friends to build you up to this person, manually wire their mind. I mean, that mind control, I mean, it's just horrible. So
it sounds like narcissism, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Just to get honest with you, it sounds a little bit like narcissism.
It does. It absolutely does.
Does any of that sound like real love, where you are loved for who you are? Even if you could succeed in doing this little mind manipulation thing, you've got to, now you're on a treadmill of constantly having to keep that mind manipulated.
Yes.
This is not love.
No.
It is something else.
Yeah.
For people that don't have a secure love style, that don't know how to genuinely love so people can love them back, what do brains settle for when they can't settle on love? they will go to power.
Mm-hmm.
When you can't trust love and it's or your abilities of, you will fall back to the standard that almost everybody in humanity is. How can I settle on power?
Yeah.
And this sort of manipulation is just a variation of this is about power, not love.
Right, exactly. And that's really the first takeaway, on this segment today. If you tuned into the title, How to Make Someone Fall in Love with You, the first takeaway is don't listen to this advice that this article came up pretty high in
Yeah.
the Google search. And it's horrible advice. So let's switch gear.
Well, it feels like empowerment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Until you realize there's no real core integrity to this sense of empowerment. It feels like empowerment. When I talk empowered with choice is a secure feeling, but this is empowered with manipulation. That's a whole other, this feels more like a personality disorder writing as a coach to make a buck.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So let's go back to your book because I love this here. Create the love you deserve. How do you create love and create a loving relationship? Can you make someone fall in love with you on any spectrum?
No, you can't. And manipulation will always feel like control and it will violate the feeling
Yeah.
of. Now, I'll give you a funny story. Years and years and years and years ago, about 15 years ago, when I was first training, I was doing the NLP is one of the core methodologies. I use a lot of other things these days, but I first started there. A very soulful type where it's about being in rapport with people and not this other stuff. And she was too, but with somebody else. And one day we get into a couple disagreement. And she's talking, and I hear this phrase. And I'm thinking, did she just use hypnotic language on me? No, she would never have done that. And then we're talking, and we're still disagreeing, and I hear another phrase. I'm going, surely not. Surely not. I hear it again. I'm going, I could have swore that was hypnotic language. And then I hear it a fourth and a fifth time. And so I'm amused by it, and I whip one back on her. And she goes, you're evil. I said, you started it. Now, we laughed about it, but this is not, but if I was saying, I said, surely we can do better than to try to manipulate each other like this. Yeah. This was not dialogue, Mm-hmm. Now, she goes, well, I thought it was worth a shot. But this is a long term. That's not how. What keeps lasting is when you can attune to each other. Mm-hmm. The real power in a relationship is when you mutually empower each other. I just wrote an email about that. And, this is about making what creates love is can you make each other feel worthy of having your needs met? And can you love in spite of the differences? A lot of times we can fall in love with someone who isn't all of this long list of criteria. Right. In fact, the research points out when we use long lists of criteria, we're using compatibility, and the track record of compatibility is not that great versus tracking the emotions of a secure friendship. It's the quality of the marital friendship, the partnership, that is the predictor. Not, how can I manipulate their list and their needs? No human being is going to be long-term in a relationship like that before they notice it. And then it will not feel genuine, and then they will not feel loved. Yeah. And then if you're the one doing it, they're going to fall out of love with you. It's an inevitable fate.
Yeah, you brought up a great point that I want to make sure everybody caught, and that is the friendship part of it. The friends that I have who, have been married for a long time, have been together, it doesn't matter if you're married or not, but a long relationship, they genuinely like each other. They like being with each other. They're friends. That is such a huge predictor, and it's so important, especially when you first start. Do you feel like you're friends with this person, or, are you in a manipulative situation? But that, to me, is a huge indicator. Anyway, I'll give it back over to you.
The research is clear, too. The Gottmans did some research and found out that what most people esteem the most in relationships, 70% of men and women, there's no gender difference on this one. 70% of all people say the biggest thing they're looking for is the quality of the marital friendship. Julie Gottman, his wife, I once heard her say, somebody asked her, how would you define marriage? She goes, oh, it's easy. It's nudity with friendship. It's friendship with nudity. It's friendship with nudity. That's how she put it. And when you look at that statistic, it's beautiful friendship with nudity. Now what's this other thing? Does it sound like friendship to have someone coming in here with a bunch of NLP tool bags he talked about, to try to manipulate you? And if you could get someone to do that, would you ever feel loved?
Right.
And you can't control another human being. You can only respond.
Let me ask you something a little not off subject. I mean, it goes along with this, but something I hadn't thought about asking you, and that is the whole thing with attraction. Immediate chemistry, immediate sparks. We are so plagued with that now, with online dating. It's such a quick decision process of whether or not you're going to see someone. It's not like you've gotten to know them at work or through outside activities. How does that play into creating a lasting relationship?
I've always, I didn't address it so much in my book because I think there has to be some level of physical chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
There just does.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and if you talk to matchmakers, you'll find out that if a woman looks at a set of pictures and says,
Mm-hmm.
They're using a matchmaker agency and they're not that attracted, they'll let them say, go out 5 or 6 times and see if you can fall in love. With men, and I've got that wiring too, if you're not attracted, you're not attracted. And you can try to get your brain to do it, but there's hardware. Mm-hmm. But it's also true that even for men, how a woman carries herself, the confidence, you can fall in love with someone that may not have met all of your criteria. And I think the more mature we get when we're 19 and 20, yes, we are looking for that perfect body, right? But then, I think by our 30s, we start catching on that it's about being loved. Mm-hmm. And there's been research to point out that if people are going after a divorce, especially for men and women, they tend to go out with someone that's mostly loaded toward the physical chemistry. Mm-hmm. Someone's hot. But once they get healed up enough to want to get that to settle down again and create a lasting marriage, mm-hmm. their criteria change. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they get more, it's more about the quality. So we're not judging it. We're simply saying, yes, it has to be there. I don't know any man or woman that doesn't want to think their spouse thinks they're sexy.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
And I think that I agree with you. Obviously, there has to be some chemistry. But I know in my own life, in my own experience, anybody that I've been in a long-term relationship with, that chemistry grew. There wasn't this, wow factor right up front, and that's because I got to know them, the personality, and and I don't know. Are you saying that's more of a woman's perspective than a man's?
I think women do a little more naturally, but I think men grow into it. Once I got into my 30s, especially, I began to look at things a little differently. Mm-hmm. I think that's called maturity, and I do think. Even as a young man, I remember going out in college with a few women I thought were hot, and it took me 4 or 5 dates of their the selfishness and the self-centered thing, and they just weren't as hot anymore. I'm not old enough at that time, at 21 or 22, to realize what Gottman would say later about the quality of the marital friendship. It just wasn't, right? What you're looking for is an entire package. Mm-hmm. Yes, there is something to do. I'm not going to say there shouldn't be any attention to attraction, mm-hmm. but I think we can. I think the more secure we are, the more we balance that with the package of who the other person is. Package probably not being the best word, but the essence. Let me put it that way. That's a better word. The essence of who they are, and there is just something about that essence that you just can't get elsewhere. That you just adore, you cherish, you value. And that is where you're truly making love.
Yeah. Well, Gary, we're starting to come to the end. Let me close this out by asking you this question. When somebody comes to you, and they probably already have, and say, Gary, Dr. Salyer, How do I make this person fall in love with me? Is there a quick answer?
Well, first, the quick answer would say, it's if you want to make them fall in love with you, then be the most loving version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a variation of that old proverb. I think it's Australian, where the 8-year-old boy comes up to his mother and says, "Mom, how do I find the right girl?" And and the mom says, "Don't worry about finding the right girl. Be the right man."
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And
It's a
and
very,
that does is what it comes down to. There is no secret. There are no ways. There are no scientifically proven ways. And I think that's as I said earlier, that's my main takeaways. Don't fall for this stuff. Don't become a person that is manipulative. My goodness. I was really surprised to read so much about that. Gary, thank you so much. Always love having you on Second Act. You're full of great advice. I will link to your book, to your website. If anybody wants to get in contact with Gary directly, please do so. He does do his transformational mentoring on a worldwide basis, and I would encourage you to get in touch with him if anything here resonated with you. So, Gary, again, thank you. We'll see you again soon on Second Act TV.
Thank you.
If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right over here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too. We'll notify you every time we launch a new video. See you next time.